I'm an economist.
And I'm a writer.
And this is Gains from Trade.
So our little fairy tale gave us a pretty good look at comparative advantage, huh, Steve?
It does.
The mouse, the bird, and the sausage are all happily pursuing their own tasks, doing the thing they're comparatively better at than the others, and then disaster strikes when they stop following their comparative advantage.
And it's a good way to remember that what you're really thinking about when you're thinking about comparative advantage is the way in which each person's ability can be used to maximize the productivity of the whole.
And it's not just individuals. I mean, you guys talk about how nations have comparative advantage. Isn't that the classic example?
That's right. And in fact, when economists first began to think about comparative advantage, they did it in terms of trade among nations. The economist David Ricardo, writing at the turn of the 19th century, recognized that both England and Portugal would be better off if each specialized in the thing they produced most cheaply. So Portugal sells England tasty wine, and England sells Portugal cloth. Later on, economists developed this into a more comprehensive theory of exchange by recognizing that individuals too had comparative advantages.
They should have just watched The Brady Bunch.
Why?
Don't you remember the episode of The Brady Bunch where the mom and dad trade places for the day?
Oh yeah, or like that episode of I Love Lucy, where Ricky and Fred challenge Lucy and Ethel to go out and get jobs while they stay home and take care of the house.
That theme of switching places is a really common theme in all kinds of literature. Usually people discover that they've deserted their comparative advantage and they can't wait to get back to what they're good at. But in a 1924 novel by Dorothy Canfield Fisher called The Homemaker, she has a husband and wife switch jobs, and they discover that she is way better at being at the office and he's way better at being at home. So they fly in the face of convention in order to do the things they're best at.
That's really radical for the 1920s, but for an economist, there's nothing shocking about it. It's just comparative advantage. In fact, when you think about it, it's exactly what we're doing right now.
You mean how I'm a literature geek who's a pretty good armchair economist?
And I'm an economist who knows a little literature. But even if we were doing a project about economics and hockey,
Horwitz, I don't know anything about hockey.
which means I would have an absolute advantage at both because I was better at both.
But in that situation, I'd have a comparative advantage at economics because compared to you, I'm relatively better at talking about economics than I am at talking about hockey.
Exactly. So even though it might seem as though we'd be better off if I did the whole project myself since I'm better at both, it actually makes more sense for me to specialize in hockey and for you to specialize in economics. You can also see examples of this all the time in international trade, where a country like the United States is better at producing almost everything than a smaller country, yet both countries benefit when the smaller country specializes in its comparative advantage.
I guess that's why even if the mouse is better at gathering twigs and keeping house than the bird, they should both stick with their comparative advantage.
Yup, that way everyone's better off.
So if you're looking for examples of comparative advantage, keep an eye out for stories about people trading places.
Isn't that a movie?
But keep an eye out for stories about people trading places, because what happens next will usually tell you if they've been pursuing their comparative advantage or not.